For the fantasy baseball season. And so far this season going quick already out of the gates. But here's a few hitters I would look to add on the waiver wire this week. The first guy's Randall Garcia of the Texas Rangers. So Garcia, a former St. Louis Cardinal, and a pretty decent prospect, but he just never panned out for the Cardinals. So now he has a chance this season here with the Texas Rangers. So far in the season, he's 13 for 49. 5 home runs, 13 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a .265 batting average, and a .294 on-base percentage. So Garcia, over the last week now, he's really exploded onto the scene for the Rangers and for fantasy owners. And in the last week, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, 5 runs scored, a .333 batting average, and a .385 on-base percentage. So Garcia, we always knew he was a big power bat coming up through the minor league system. But now here with the Texas Rangers, he's getting an opportunity every day, where in St. Louis he really didn't get an opportunity. And the last few games here for Garcia, April 21st at the Angels, 2 for 5 with a homer and 3 RBIs. April 23rd at Chicago White Sox, 2 homers, 4 RBIs. April 24th at the White Sox, 1 for 4. And yesterday versus Chicago, 1 for 4 winning RBIs. So right now he's batting 4th or 5th in the middle of this Ranger offense. And this Ranger team obviously needs some hitting. And Garcia, so far, he's stepped up to the plate, and he's definitely producing. And he's available in 67% of fantasy leagues. So if you need some power and a guy on the hot streak, this is the guy to get in Randall Garcia. The next hitter's Carson Kelly of the Arizona Diamondbacks. So Kelly, the big trade chip in the Paul Goldschmidt deal a few seasons ago, going from St. Louis to Arizona. And Kelly, he's been hitting well this season. On the season, 14 for 44, 5 home runs, 12 RBIs, a .318 batting average, an awesome 500 on-base percentage, and 10 runs scored here for Carson Kelly. So Kelly, he's been a top prospect in the past for the Cardinals, and that's why the Diamondbacks went out there and got him in a deal. And right now, he's up there in the catcher rankings right now for fantasy baseball. And the last few games here for Kelly, April 22nd at Cincinnati, 1 for 5 with a homer and 2 RBIs. April 23rd at Baltimore, 1 for 4 with a homer and 2 RBIs. And then yesterday in one game of the doubleheader at Atlanta, 0 for 3 with a run. So Kelly, he's hitting the baseball well. He's showing some power, and he's getting on base at a crazy rate right now. And he's available in 41% of fantasy leagues. So if you need catching help, which most fantasy teams do, Carson Kelly, if he's out there somehow in your leagues, you should go out there and definitely get him, because he's valuable right now. And he's at a weak catcher position that guys don't really produce or put up big numbers except 3 or 4 players at the position. The next player is Brandon Nimmo of the New York Mets. So Brandon Nimmo, he's been a bright spot here for a struggling Met offense so far in the early going on the season. So far in the season, he's 20 for 54, 1 home run, 8 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 7 runs scored, a .370 batting average, and a .477 on-base percentage here for Nimmo. So Nimmo, he's been hitting the baseball well, and he's the catalyst for this Met offense, batting first, obviously, except versus lefties, he don't really start. But besides that, Nimmo, he's going to play every day for this Met team. And he was a former top prospect for a reason, but the last few games, his numbers have dropped off just a bit. April 23rd versus Washington, 3 for 5 with a homer, 4 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. April 24th versus Washington, 0 for 2. And then yesterday versus Washington, 0 for 3. So Brandon Nimmo, he might be hitting a little bit of a slump, but this guy, his on-base percentage is always going to be legit. He goes up there and he takes a lot of pitches for this Met team. And he's always up there in the league leaders in pitches seen and walks. So Brandon Nimmo, if you need some on-base percentage, you need some runs scored and a decent batting average, I don't think he's a bad ad this week on the waiver wire. And he's available in 50% of fantasy leagues. The next hitter is Kolten Wong of the Milwaukee Brewers. So Kolten Wong, the former St. Louis Cardinal, signed with the Milwaukee Brewers here in the offseason. And he just came back from an injury of his own, is Wong, in the last few games. So on the season, 9 for 32, 1 home run, 2 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, a .281 batting average, a .425 on-base percentage, and 6 runs scored here for Wong. So Wong, he was out for a few weeks and returned in that weekend series at the Chicago Cubs. April 23rd versus the Cubs, 3 for 4 with a homer and a stolen base. April 24th, 2 for 4 with a run. And then yesterday, 2 for 5 with 2 runs and an RBI. So Kolten Wong, he's had 3 multiple hit games in a row since he came back. And second base this season in fantasy, it's a weak position. And Wong, we know throughout his career, he's a pretty good hitter for batting average and on-base percentage. And he could show some pop as well. And right now, he's available in 78% of fantasy leagues. So if you need some second base help, I don't think you could go wrong with Kolten Wong. The next guy is Austin Riley of the Atlanta Braves. So Riley, a former top prospect in the Atlanta Braves system. And so far this season, he's been decent. He qualifies at third in outfield, which is good versatility as well. So on the season, 14 for 58 from the plate, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, a 241 batting average, a 375 on base percentage, which is great, and 10 runs scored. And in the last week, he's really picked it up, is Riley, after getting off to a slow start on the year. 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, a 364 batting average, and a 563 on base with 4 runs scored in the last week here for Riley. And Riley, he's available in 59% of fantasy leagues, and he's picked it up the last 3 games. April 21st at the Yankees, 2 for 2 with a home run and 3 runs scored. April 23rd versus Arizona, 1 for 3 with a homer and 2 RBIs. And yesterday in the doubleheader versus Arizona, 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts in that one. So now Riley and the Braves, they versus the Chicago Cubs coming to town here in Atlanta. And I think Riley, he could have another good series here. The Cubs pitching, it's been pretty decent so far this season, but this Brave offense is pretty loaded. And if you need some third base or outfield help, I don't think you could go wrong with Riley. He was a former top prospect. He's hitting the baseball well right now, and he should be owned in more leagues. The next hit is David Peralta of the Arizona Diamondbacks. So David Peralta, he's been quiet the last couple seasons, but so far this year, tearing it up is Peralta, and he's available in 55% of fantasy leagues. So before the window closes on picking him up, you should go out there now and get him. On the season, he's 20 for 79. 3 home runs, 18 RBIs, 12 runs scored, 253 batting average, and a 322 on base percentage. So the batting average is low, but everything else is pretty solid for Peralta, including the 18 RBIs. And last week was his breakout party for Peralta. He went 2 home runs, 11 RBIs, 6 runs scored, a 375 batting average, and a 444 on base percentage. So right now, Peralta, he's getting into the groove of things, and he's starting to produce here for this Arizona Diamondback team that definitely needs their hitters to step up and produce. April 22nd at Cincinnati, his huge game, 5 for 6, a home run, 7 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. April 23rd at Atlanta, 1 for 4 with a run. And yesterday in the doubleheader at Atlanta, 1 for 8, but he did have a home run in that ball game, and he didn't strike out. So Peralta, he's putting the ball in play. He's not striking out much. And right now, the only down thing with him is the batting average. But this guy, he's been a fantasy monster so far, in my opinion, besides the average, helping owners scoring runs and driving in runs. So David Peralta is definitely an ad this week. The next play is Alex Kerloff, top prospect, the Minnesota Twins. So he got called up late last week as Kerloff, and he's been added in about 20% of fantasy leagues, but he's still available in a whopping 69% of fantasy leagues is the 23-year-old Kerloff. So far in the early going, it's been hard for him. 0 for 14 with 3 strikeouts in the early going. So he's putting the ball in play at least, but he just can't find the holes here and get the hits as Kerloff. But right now, if he's out there on your waiver wire, 12-team leagues or deeper, I would go out there and get him because he's been a top 5 prospect in Major League Baseball the last few seasons. And the Minnesota Twins, they're giving him an opportunity each and every day to go out there and see what he has for this Twin team. So Kerloff, it's just early season struggles. He's a young guy. It's his first time in the majors, and there's definitely pressure there. Even though he's only in Minnesota, he's still going to have to go out there and produce after this high touting and all this hype with him coming up. So Kerloff, it struggles right now, but I would still go out there and get him, unless obviously they call him down or if he goes into like an 0 for 30 slump or something. But right now, go out there and get him. The next batter is Randall Richard of the Toronto Blue Jays. So Grichuk, he's a player that I feel like he don't get much respect in the major leagues or fantasy baseball. And on the season, it's been a good year for Grichuk so far. 21 for 72 from the plate. 4 home runs, 16 RBIs, a 292 batting average, a 350 on base, 10 runs. And this week, he's really gotten it going with Grichuk. He had 3 home runs, 6 RBIs, 4 runs scored, a 316 batting average, and a 381 on base percentage. So Grichuk, for some reason, he always terrorizes the Tampa Bay Rays and the New York Yankees, and that's what he's been doing. Once again, last week was Grichuk, April 23rd at Tampa Bay, 1 for 3 with a home run and 2 runs scored. April 24th at Tampa, 1 for 3 with a homer and 3 RBIs. And then yesterday he went 0 for 4, but right now Grichuk, he's batting 4th or 5th in the lineup here for Toronto. And Toronto, they count on this guy, and he definitely produces numbers. Last season he played well with the 12 homers in the 60 games. And this season, he's a guy with 25 to 30 home run power, and he's a player that should be owned in more leagues. But right now, managers, they're waking up and adding him, with his percentage going up 6% so far. But he's still available in 44% of fantasy leagues, and I would go out there and get him. The next hitter, Tapia of the Colorado Rockies. So Tapia, he's been a good ball player the last few seasons, is Raimel Tapia, for this Rocky team. But this season, he's getting an everyday opportunity pretty much, and he's making the most of it. So far, 22 for 72, 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, a stolen base, a 306 batting average, a 363 on base percentage, and 8 runs scored here for Tapia. So Tapia, the last week, he's really been tearing it up. 1 home run, 5 RBIs, 5 runs scored, a 444 batting average, and a 522 on base percentage. So Tapia, he was wearing out the Philadelphia Phillies in the last week. And he's an everyday player for this Rocky team. And he's a guy that sets the table and leads off, even though this Rocky team have struggled so far this season here. Tapia, he's available in 68% of fantasy leagues in the last few games for him. April 23rd versus Philly, 3 for 5 with a homer. April 24th, 1 for 3 with an RBI and 2 runs scored. And yesterday versus Philly in the blowout victory, 2 for 5 with a run and 2 RBIs. So this guy's scoring runs. He's driving in runs as well with an RBI in the last 4 games for Tapia. And just continue to ride the hot streak with him and pick him up if you need some outfield help with some speed and runs scored and the final hitter. I would look to add on waivers this week's Omar Narvaez of the Milwaukee Brewers. And Narvaez, another catcher that's been stepping up of late here. Fantasy owners, they've gone out there and added Narvaez in a bunch of fantasy leagues over the last week. On the season, he's 21 for 54, 3 home runs, 11 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a 389 batting average with a 477 on base. So right now, Narvaez, he's having an outstanding breakout season here. And in the last week, 1 home run, 5 RBIs, a 444 batting average, a 545 on base, and 2 runs scored here for Narvaez. So Narvaez, obviously, he's a catcher. He's not going to play each and every day, but if he's going to play 4 or 5 days a week, this guy's definitely worth a pickup and an ad in fantasy leagues, especially at a weak catcher position. And he's available in 51% of fantasy leagues. The last few games for Narvaez: April 21st at San Diego, 2 for 4 with a homer, 2 RBIs, and a run scored. April 24th at the Chicago Cubs, 0 for 3 with an RBI. And then yesterday at the Cubs, 2 for 3. So this guy, he's got a knack for hitting the baseball. Obviously, the power probably won't be that great for him. Batting average definitely could be a 300 hitter when the season is over. So that's a few hitters I would look to add on the waiver wire here in week 4 of the fantasy baseball season.